I can't do this anymore, Ethan. 7 years is enough. The words echoed softly in the empty room as Olivia Park placed a white envelope on the mahogany desk that had once been the center of her world. Inside was her resignation letter, revised and rewritten 100 times. This time, there would be no edits. Ethan Caldwell, the man she had loved silently for all those years, wasn't there to receive it. As usual, he was away in one of his endless meetings, leaving her alone with a decision she should have made years ago. Her hands trembled slightly as she organized the final folders she had meticulously maintained as if they were extensions of her own soul. The 58th floor of Caldwell & Co. headquarters was utterly silent at 6 p.m. Everyone had gone home except her. Olivia Park, the invisible executive assistant who arrived first and left last. The woman who knew her boss's coffee preferences, anticipated his every move, read the subtle shifts in his tone. Yet in all those 7 years, Ethan had never truly seen her. She picked up a small cardboard box containing her few personal belongings, a tiny cactus she had nurtured, a mug that read, "Best Assistant Ever," gifted by her younger sister, and a photo from their first Christmas party. In it, she smiled brightly among colleagues, while Ethan stood in the background, stern, unaware that her heart had chosen him that very night. The sound of the elevator arriving startled her. Her legs refused to move as the familiar silhouette stepped into the hallway. White shirt crisp, gray blazer perfectly tailored, a presence that filled every space. Ethan walked in, stopping when he saw her. "You're still here, Olivia." His voice had that neutral tone she'd grown tired of deciphering. "I was just about to leave," she lied, masking the tightness in her chest. Ethan's eyes dropped to the box in her arms, then shifted to the envelope lying stark against the wood. "What's that?" "My resignation letter, Mr. Caldwell." For the first time in 7 years, she saw something flicker in his expression, surprise and perhaps a hint of loss. The air grew heavier as Ethan walked toward the desk. He picked up the envelope, opened it, and read each line with the eyes Olivia had always longed to meet. Truly meet, not just glance over her name in emails. When he folded the letter, his expression remained calm, but his brow tightened, jaw clenched. Small signs Olivia recognized instantly. She had long mastered the art of reading him. "I don't understand," Ethan said softly, eyes leaving the paper to meet hers. "Is there a problem? The salary? The hours?" "No, sir," Olivia replied, her voice calm but soft as silk. "It's none of those things." He paused as if weighing her answer. "Then why?" he asked, the coldness in his tone replaced by a rare note of confusion. How could she tell him that every day in that office felt like slowly drowning? That every smile he gave someone else felt like a paper cut to her heart? That she had loved him since her first day, a timid intern in scuffed shoes and a heart full of hope? "I need a change," she said. It was the only truth she could give without crumbling. Ethan looked at her for a long time, then carefully set the letter back down. He stepped forward, stopping just short of her, not close enough to make her uncomfortable, but close enough that she could feel his presence like a pull she wasn't ready for. "Are you moving to another company?" he asked. His voice had softened, no longer managerial, just a man trying to understand why something important was slipping away. "I don't have a plan yet," Olivia admitted. A tense silence stretched between them. She could hear the faint hum of a printer down the hallway, the ticking of a clock, and the loud pounding of her own heart. "You never told me you weren't happy here." "You never asked." The answer landed like a quiet blade, and Ethan faltered. He ran a hand through his hair, a habit Olivia knew well. How many times had she seen him do that behind closed doors? How many times had she brewed the perfect cup of coffee just for a simple, "Thank you"? "Is there anything I can do to make you stay?" Ethan asked, his voice almost a whisper. Her heart skipped. For a second she wanted to say, "Love me." But she knew that wouldn't be fair, to him or to herself. "No, Mr. Caldwell, my decision is made." They walked toward the elevator in awkward silence. When the doors opened, Ethan courteously stepped aside. That politeness right now felt more painful than kind. "Thank you for everything, Olivia. You've been exceptional," he said as she stepped in. "Thank you," she replied, holding her voice steady. Just as the doors began to close, he reached forward. "The Harrison project files. Do you have them?" Olivia rummaged in her bag and handed them to him. Their fingers brushed. Brief, electric. Their eyes locked. For the first time, truly. But it was too late. The doors closed. Olivia saw him standing there, motionless, eyes full of something that looked an awful lot like loss. As the elevator descended, she cried, for the years of silent love, for the words never spoken, for the look that came too late. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The image of Olivia disappearing behind the elevator doors replayed in his mind like a silent, sorrowful tune. All night, he sat alone in his penthouse apartment overlooking the city that never slept. But he did, wide awake, haunted. At 5 a.m., he threw on a coat and returned to the office. The 58th floor of Caldwell & Co. was eerily silent. Olivia was gone, yet everything was perfectly in place, like she had never been there, or worse, had always been invisible. He walked to her desk. Something pulled at him. He opened the top drawer. Inside, a small wooden box, simple and elegant, engraved with 2 letters, EC. Ethan opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, he found a stack of handwritten letters, each folded neatly, labeled with dates. Some from 7 years ago, some recent. Each began with the same words. Dear Ethan. He unfolded the first one. Today is my first day as an intern. I know you don't remember me, but 3 years ago, during a rainstorm near Grand Central Station, you gave me your coat and some cash. You probably didn't know, but that night, you saved me from a decision I never want to revisit. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Rain. 3 years before that letter. 8 years ago. He remembered a girl huddled under a storefront awning, drenched and shivering, clutching an old backpack. Do you have anywhere to go? He had asked. No, I'm just waiting for the rain to stop, she had whispered. Without thinking, he'd handed her his coat, a few bills, and said, if you ever need help, just help someone else when you can. He had never imagined that girl was Olivia. He opened the second letter, written a year later. Thanks to you, I kept going in college. I worked part-time, saved money, and finally got accepted as an intern at your firm. I know you didn't recognize me. That's okay. Just being near you is enough for me. Ethan read more. Each letter pierced deeper. Silent love, quiet devotion, unspoken sacrifice. The third letter. Today, I was promoted to your executive assistant. When you said, good job, Olivia, I thought my heart would stop. That was the first time you spoke to me in 2 years. The fifth letter. I saw you with Vanessa in the boardroom today. The way you looked at her. You've never looked at me that way. I know she's married. I also know you love her. I'm not angry. Just sad. Ethan leaned against the wall, clenching the letter in his hand. Vanessa, his longtime partner, someone he once thought might fit into his world, had never made him feel seen like Olivia did when she handed him his coffee exactly how he liked it or left notes reminding him to eat. The final letter, dated just last week. Tomorrow I'm submitting my resignation, not because I don't love you, but because I love you too much. I deserve to be seen, and you deserve someone you can love back. Ethan let the letter fall to the floor. He had been blind. A woman had loved him with everything she had, never asking for anything in return. Always present, always loyal. He never truly looked at her. He bolted from the office just as dawn broke, clutching the box of letters in a heart full of regret. Now he knew. He had to find her, before it was too late. It took Ethan 3 days to track Olivia down, 3 days of silence that echoed louder than any boardroom he had ever stood in. She had vanished from his world without a trace. Her number no longer worked, her apartment was empty, her online presence erased. She had become a ghost, and Ethan was chasing a shadow he had never really understood until it disappeared. But he wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when he had finally realized what he had lost. Through a former colleague and a hesitant call to her sister, Ethan was led to a quiet corner of Brooklyn, to an old camera repair shop run by someone named Nathan. It was the kind of place that smelled of oil and metal, the air thick with dust and silence, a world away from the floor-to-ceiling glass of Caldwell & Co. His tailored suit looked ridiculous here, out of place, out of time. Nathan eyed him with skepticism, a cloth in his hand and grease on his fingers. Olivia had clearly spoken of Ethan, and clearly she hadn't done so kindly. "She doesn't want to see you," the man said simply, before turning his back and walking away. Ethan waited, and then she walked in. Olivia, with her hair tied up, wearing worn jeans and a plain white t-shirt, arms wrapped around a box of camera parts. There was something so different about her here, something real, unguarded. She looked like someone who had finally stepped into her own skin. Their eyes met. The box slipped from her hands and crashed to the ground. She knelt, gathering the scattered pieces, refusing to look up. Ethan didn't speak. He just watched. Every breath she took, every movement she made, etched itself into his memory with painful clarity. He hadn't come here to argue or beg. He came with a heart full of letters and a truth he couldn't ignore any longer. He had read every single one. Each letter had cut deeper than the last. Her voice raw, aching, brave. Letters full of quiet love, silent longing, and a strength he had been too blind to see. And within them, he had found a memory. A rainy night, years ago. A girl curled under an awning, soaked and lost. He'd given her his coat and a few bills. It had meant nothing to him then. It had meant everything to her. Now she stood before him, still that girl, but stronger, not waiting for him to see her. She had saved herself. Day by day, year by year, standing in his shadow and asking for nothing. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" Her voice broke the silence, firm and emotionless. "I came to find you," he said quietly. "You're too late." He stepped closer. "I read them all, and I realized I never really saw you." She looked away. "I don't need your regret." "It's not regret, it's awakening." His voice trembled. "When you left, everything fell silent. And then there was nothing else to say. Just the sound of tools clinking in the background and the weight of years pressing between them." Ethan didn't ask her to come back. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply stood there, stripped of all titles and power, just a man facing the only woman who had ever truly seen him, even when he couldn't see himself. As Olivia stepped out of the camera shop, thinking their conversation had ended, Ethan called after her. His voice held no desperation, only the heavy weight of truth. "There's something you need to know," he said, eyes steady now. "Vanessa has been embezzling from the company for years." Olivia froze, not because of the revelation, but because he had finally spoken it aloud. Ethan laid out the facts, false contracts, hidden accounts, and how Vanessa had used Olivia as a shield, keeping her in the dark despite being the one who had stood closest to him all these years. "And I stayed silent," Olivia said softly. Not in accusation, but like naming an old wound. "I stayed silent because I didn't know," he replied. "But now I do, and I won't let her hurt you again." For the first time, Olivia didn't see regret in his eyes. She saw resolve. Ethan returned to the office the next morning with a different kind of silence around him. Not the silence of exhaustion, but the calm before clarity. For 7 years, he had thought of Olivia as just another piece in the machine. A quiet, competent presence, nothing more. But now he understood. She had been more than essential. She had been watching, seeing what he had missed, and carrying the weight of it in silence. Not out of fear, but out of loyalty, even when he hadn't deserved it. That morning, he called a private meeting in the boardroom. Only Vanessa remained, chief operating officer, trusted partner, and someone Ethan once thought was unshakably loyal. She walked in as always, poised, confident, polished. But there was a flicker in her eyes, a crack in the veneer. "Why are we reviewing contracts from 3 years ago?" she asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Ethan didn't answer right away. He placed a stack of documents on the table. Every page marked, traced, documented. Bank transfers, ghost vendors, numbers that didn't lie. Because someone used this company to steal, and that someone is in this room. The temperature dropped. Vanessa's lips twitched into a smile, but her voice lost its steadiness. "You think it's me?" Still silent, Ethan opened another folder, containing a contract with a non-existent construction firm and a $3 million transfer to an offshore Cayman account. Vanessa's color drained, her arms folded, her words turned defensive. "Let me guess, Olivia, she's poisoning you against me. She's always been jealous, always watching." Ethan exhaled slowly, not in fatigue, but in regret. She knew, for a long time. She had proof, but she didn't use it to destroy you. She used it to protect me and this company. Vanessa rose, her composure slipping. I've been here since the beginning, she snapped. I've stood beside you for years, and now you choose her, a nobody assistant? She was never nobody, Ethan said quietly. I just never saw her. Silence fell. Vanessa turned away, her voice lower, bitter. I loved you, Ethan. I waited. I thought someday you'd look at me. He stood, his voice steady now. You loved me by stealing from my company? By threatening the one woman who protected me without asking for anything? She said nothing. She knew there was nothing left to say. The papers on the table, carefully compiled by Olivia, spoke louder than any excuse. Ethan didn't call security. He didn't yell. He only said one sentence. You have 24 hours to resign, or I let the law handle it. As Vanessa walked out, her steps no longer confident, Ethan watched a carefully constructed facade collapse. And in the silence that followed, one truth stood firm. Olivia had never needed power to protect what mattered. She had guarded it with heart, with loyalty, with love. Now Ethan knew where his heart had always belonged. The rain had already started when he stepped out of the building. Not a light drizzle, but a heavy summer downpour. Relentless, loud, and soaking. It mirrored everything inside him. He didn't call a car. He didn't open an umbrella. He walked, step by step through the storm, as though punishing himself, or perhaps being washed clean of all he used to be. Central Park in the rain was nearly deserted. The cobblestone paths glistened, tree branches drooped low, and the world seemed to pause under the weight of water and silence. That's when he saw her. Sitting alone on a bench near the lake, Olivia didn't shelter from the storm. Her gaze was fixed on the water, her shoulders still. Rain poured down her hair and face, but she didn't flinch. She looked like someone who had spent a lifetime sitting in the rain. She didn't turn around when she heard him approaching. She didn't need to. No umbrella? She said softly. Don't need one, he replied. I'm done hiding under anything. They sat side by side, not touching, letting the silence speak for them, letting the rain be witness. Ethan didn't know how to begin. There was too much to say, and yet nothing that could make up for what he hadn't seen, what he hadn't felt until now. But for once, he wasn't afraid. Not of rejection, not of pain, because the worst pain was having never seen her at all. I love you, Olivia, he said without preamble, without defense. She turned to him. Her eyes weren't sad. They were clear, and in them was a truth. She had waited years to hear those words, but she wasn't that girl anymore. Why now? She asked quietly. Because I'd never lost you before, he answered. I didn't know what it meant to lose something I never truly saw. The rain fell harder, but they didn't move. I read every letter, he continued, and I remember the rain that night. I remember your eyes. You were a stranger, but something in you stopped me. And now, you're not a stranger. You're the only person I want to keep. Her breath caught. Her shoulders trembled, not from cold, but from the emotion she'd locked away too long. She couldn't tell if the wetness on her cheeks was rain or tears. I loved you with everything I had, she whispered, but I can't keep being seen without being truly looked at. I see you now, Ethan said, eyes never leaving hers, and I won't close my eyes again. The space between them wasn't far, but it had taken 7 years to cross. He reached out and touched her cheek, gently, reverently. She didn't pull away. They kissed in the rain, not like in the movies, but like two souls who had wandered too long and finally found each other. It was a release, a forgiveness, a promise. When they parted, Ethan spoke softly. If you don't want to come back, I understand. But if even one small part of you wants to believe in me, let me prove it. Thus, Olivia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, once gently. It was all he needed. The rain kept falling, but this time it wasn't cold. It was beginning. It was grace. It was hope. That rain had ended like a quiet ceremony, washing away the silence of 7 years. the ache of unspoken words, and the wounds that never had a name. After Olivia's nod, no magic happened. Not immediately. There was no fairy tale moment, no sweeping conclusion wrapped in ribbons. 3 months passed, not loud or dramatic, but just enough to change everything. Ethan learned to slow down. Olivia learned to believe that she deserved to be seen, to be chosen, not in moments of weakness, but for an entire life. And so, on a golden June afternoon, she stepped into Caldwell & Co. once more. No longer the girl with lowered eyes, no longer the familiar shadow trailing behind. This time Olivia came back, not to leave again. The elevator stopped at the 60th floor, the highest level of Caldwell & Co. The doors slid open to reveal a space that looked nothing like what Olivia Park had kept in her memory for 7 long years. The last time she stepped out of this elevator, her heart had shattered in silence. But today was different. She stepped out as someone entirely new. Not a silent assistant standing behind someone else's success, but a partner, a woman seen, heard, and loved. The late afternoon sky was painted in warm orange tones, sunlight gilding the glass walls that framed the city below. On the wide terrace overlooking the skyline, Ethan stood waiting, not the sharp-suited CEO of every morning. Today he wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled, hair a little tousled, and somehow that simple sight made Olivia's heart settle. "You came," Ethan smiled, walking toward her. 3 months had passed since that rainy afternoon in the park. 3 months of shared coffees in the morning, quiet evenings reading side by side, of Ethan washing dishes while Olivia sneakily snapped photos. 3 months long enough to learn that love doesn't need grand promises, it needs daily presence. They stood side by side, watching the city stretch out beneath them. The city that once felt like Olivia's unreachable dream. Now the place where she stood firm, beside the man who once couldn't see her. "I remember the first time you came up here," Ethan said. "You brought coffee for the meeting with the Japanese investors." "I thought this was the closest place to the sky," Olivia chuckled softly. "Now I know. Height means nothing if you have no one to share the view with." Ethan turned to her. "These past 3 months, I've learned more about you than I ever did in 7 years. Like how you hum when you wash dishes, how you read 3 books at once, that scar on your left knee from chasing a stray cat." Olivia laughed. "You really took notes." "I'm just learning all the details I once overlooked." He paused, then slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The setting sun caught the ring inside. Simple, no flash, but stunning in its sincerity. "I know we lost a lot of time," he said quietly, "but I don't want to waste another single day. Olivia Park, you were once the quiet dream I didn't know I needed, but now I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. Will you marry me?" There was no applause, no dramatic music, just the breeze, their breathing, and a smile. "Yes," she said without hesitation. After that soft yes, nothing turned into a fairy tale, yet everything felt more real than ever. The ring on Olivia's hand didn't weigh heavy with diamonds, but with years of waiting, with a love once buried and now finally free. Ethan was no longer the powerful boss she once loved in silence, but the man who dared to face his past and build something kind in the present. They didn't promise never to hurt each other, but they promised never to go silent when it happened. They didn't promise to always be happy, but they promised never to abandon each other in sorrow. Their love wasn't born from perfection, but from every flaw that once kept them apart. Now they chose to move forward, not as 2 broken people, but as 2 hearts healed and ready to rewrite their story. And under a sky filled with stars where old wounds were warmed by new light, they spoke their promises, not in words, but through the quiet, undeniable presence of love. Night fell over the city like a soft velvet blanket, gently covering rooftops and glass windows that shimmered from distant lights. On the rooftop of Caldwell & Co., the lights had been dimmed. Only soft strands of fairy lights glowed above, and the sky, wide and starlit, felt like a stage for a quiet kind of magic. Olivia leaned into Ethan on a wooden bench by the railing. Her head rested against his shoulder, their breathing in rhythm with the gentle wind that brushed past. No words were spoken, just the kind of silence only shared between people who trust each other completely. There had been nights she cried alone in her tiny apartment, clutching letters never sent. Days he had turned away from the most precious thing in his life, simply because he refused to see. Now the city was still the same. The wind, the stars, the same. But they were different. Ethan gently squeezed her hand. I used to think love was something you had to fight for, to hold tightly, to never let slip away. But now I know, real love is what stays when everything else disappears. Olivia looked up at him. Her eyes sparkled, not from the stars, but from the fragile trust rebuilding itself slowly, layer by layer, in his presence. She didn't need him to be a hero or to say all the right words. She just needed to be seen, chosen, loved, not as an afterthought, but by someone who was finally, truly ready. I don't want to be part of your life, she whispered. I want to walk beside you, not behind. Ethan smiled, resting his forehead gently against hers. And I'll be there, every step, every road. Not as the man who once missed you, but as the one who'll never let it happen again. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Neither of them made a wish, because what they once wished for was already here, in the rhythm of their hearts, in the warmth of their joined hands. There was no perfect ending, only a choice made again and again each day, to love, to stay, to forgive. And in the quiet space between starlight and the scent of a June night, they sat side by side, saying nothing more. Because sometimes the strongest promise isn't spoken out loud. It's simply never leaving. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them had anywhere else to go. 1 year after that proposal, on a crisp autumn morning, Ethan and Olivia's wedding took place in a quiet garden beside the home they had just moved into on the outskirts of the city. There were no crowds, no extravagant fanfare, just close family, a few old friends, and a lone violin playing a gentle tune as Olivia walked down the stone path, holding a bouquet of lavender, the same flower she used to grow during the years she loved him in silence. Ethan waited at the end, dressed in a simple gray-blue suit. His gaze no longer held the sharpness of a powerful CEO, but the warmth of a man who had waited his entire life to finally see the woman in front of him. I vow to always listen, even when you don't say a word, Ethan whispered, his hand tightening gently around hers as they exchanged vows. I don't need you to be perfect, Olivia replied. I just need you to be real, and to stay. Pure. When they kissed as husband and wife for the first time, golden leaves drifted gently from the trees like blessings from the season itself. There was no thunderous applause, only wind, and the soft laughter of those who understood. True love doesn't need spectacle. It only needs the right person, the right moment, and the courage to remain. Life after marriage wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful, and that peace became their most precious gift. Ethan still worked at Caldwell & Co., but he no longer missed meals or pulled all-nighters. He made time to cook dinner with Olivia in their sun-filled kitchen. Olivia didn't return as an assistant. Instead, she opened a small bookstore cafe in Brooklyn, where people came to read handwritten letters or write the ones they'd never dared to send. Each night, they sat side by side on the couch, feet touching, sometimes reading, sometimes just quietly existing together. Olivia had once said, "Marriage isn't about sharing joy. It's about not walking away when things are hard." Ethan carried that with him daily. Then something miraculous happened. One rainy morning, eerily like the one when they found each other, Olivia stood frozen in the bathroom, clutching a pregnancy test. Ethan walked in and saw the emotion in her eyes. He didn't wait for words. He knelt, placed a hand on her stomach, and asked softly, "Is it true?" She nodded. His smile said everything she needed to hear. That yes, she was enough. That yes, this love was real. That yes, this future was exactly where she belonged. By the 8th month, during a routine checkup, the doctor smiled and turned the screen toward them. "Congratulations, it's twins, 2 girls." Ethan laughed and Olivia burst into joyful tears. He hugged her right there in the exam room, overwhelmed. "Just like you," he said, "always full of surprises." When their daughters were born, one with soft brown curls, the other with deep dimples like her father, the world seemed to pause. They named the girls Elise and Clara, names Olivia had once written in unsent letters. Those dreams were no longer figments of the past. They were alive, breathing, sleeping in her arms. Proof that waiting wasn't in vain. One early summer evening, with the sun dipping low and golden, Ethan cradled Elise while Olivia gently rocked Clara on the porch swing. Their home echoed with laughter, tiny baby coos, bedtime stories from a father who once lived in silence, lullabies hummed by a mother who had once written in solitude. "Do you regret anything?" Ethan asked, his voice low in the breeze. Olivia looked around. The garden, the sky, her daughter's tiny feet, and the man beside her. "No," she said, resting her head on his shoulder, "because every word I once wrote finally found someone to receive it." In that moment, the past was no longer painful. It had become the path to their present. And the future? It was in every shared moment, every quiet laugh, every breath of love spoken without a word. Rain may have once hidden them, but now love stood in full sunlight, steadfast, healed, and home.